So we're talking about room fillers today, and you're asking, what are room fillers? What are they? Well, they're basically fragrances that fill a room and the smell doesn't disappear for a long time. They're intense fragrances, long-lasting fragrances, beefy fragrances. I really like to use that word for fragrances because the fragrances I'm going to talk to you about today are really long-lasting, intense, beefy fragrances, dense fragrances. They're not thin whatsoever. So if you're curious to learn about 20 room filler fragrances, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yeah, today we're talking about room filler fragrances, or room fillers in general. And these are, as I said, beefy fragrances. They're not fragrances for wimps. If you like them, long-lasting, intense fragrances, if you want fragrances to have a massive cloud, if you want that big projection, these are the fragrances for you. If you don't like them that intense, you might want to shy away or stay away from these fragrances. So why don't we go ahead and get started with the first fragrance. It's from the house of Fragrance du Bois. It's Parisian. So before I move forward with that though, I should let you know the first 10 I'm going to talk to you about are not as intense and beefy as the latter 10. And the latter 10, the fragrances are really big, major room fillers. So it's not a ranked list. I'm giving you a selection today of 20. Parisian from Fragrance du Bois is definitely a room filler with a very oudy presence. Oud and smokiness and resinous touches and spices, and of course rose as well. Eventually it becomes ambery in the dry down. But if you like your ouds with rose and amber and spices, and of course some Oakmoss, definitely try Parisian from the house of Fragrance du Bois. Next fragrance, we're going to the house of JOVOY, and I always recommend this one. It's Psychedelique. I featured this one in my Scent Club kit number 3. Really one of my all-time favorite fragrances. Favorite fragrance from JOVOY, obviously. It's all about patchouli. Definitely a room filler. It's intense, it's beefy, it's long-lasting, it leaves a cloud, massive trail. People chase you down smelling this stuff, and I love that about it. So the notes are patchouli, amber, vanilla, musk, labdanum, geranium, and rose, and it creates a kind of a chocolatey patchouli experience. It's because they're combining the earthy patchouli with vanillic amber kind of notes. Really wonderful fragrance. Psychedelique is the second fragrance, and we're going to the house of Thomas de Monaco, Raw Gold. Raw Gold is definitely become one of my favorite fragrances. It's definitely honeyed. Got a honeyed presence for sure, but it's resins. It's got Opoponax, patchouli, honey, suede, tonka beans, coffee, civet, and liquor. There's a bit of barnyard in here, so you got to be aware of that. If you don't like animalic fragrances, stay away. But this one's very sweet and ambery, and of course patchouli and lightly boozy as well. Definitely a great room filler. It's Raw Gold, and I've gotten compliments with that one as well. Moving on to the house of LORENZO PAZZAGLIA. It's Carbonara, an amber fragrance. You're going to notice that there's definitely going to be a lot of ambery fragrances here, because for me those are the kind of fragrances that linger on for a long time. So Pazzaglia's Carbonara is kind of like inspired by spaghetti carbonara, I believe. At least some of the notes in here are very carbonara-like, especially the black pepper. It's a very peppery amber. I really love carbonara. Spaghetti carbonara is one of my favorites, and I think that's what I get with this one, especially since it is called carbonara. But in the end, it's got lots of amber, it's got lots of vanilla, it's got lots of sandalwood, and of course that pepper spice comes in to kind of like accentuate and give you more of an exciting amber fragrance with lots of black pepper. So Carbonara from the house of Lorenzo Pazzaglia, the fourth fragrance I'm talking about. Next, going to the house of Guerlain. Yes, we have a Guerlain here. This is Bois Mystérieux. What a fragrance this is. It's so super sexy. It's definitely got leather here and resins. And of course there's cumin in here as well. So this is a bit animalic, but more of a sweaty, funky, kind of musky rather than like animalic notes like civet and castoreum and things like that. It's got a dry presence, but lots of patchouli, neroli, laurel, cumin, cedar, leather, myrrh. Wonderful fragrance. Really loved wearing that one. I like its dryness and I like its intensity, and it's a kind of a rare thing from Guerlain. I am starting to feature this particular fragrance I recently brought back from the UK. It's Harmonious from the house of BOADICEA the Victorious. This is such a great fragrance, and it's also very, very big and very, very long lasting. So it definitely fills a room. This to me is also sort of like Dior Homme Parfum. In fact, it's more of a rosy take on Dior Homme Parfum, more of a boozy take on Dior Homme Parfum. And then of course it's also a bit makeup-like take on Dior Homme Parfum. Dior Homme Parfum is lipsticky, and this kind of acts more like makeup, but in the end it's very similar notes. You've got Ambrette, you've got Orris, Musk, vanilla. There's definitely roses here, cognac and rum, bergamot, leather, and vetiver. Really, really great fragrance. Really love it. If you can't find Dior Homme Parfum, that is a great alternative. It is on the pricey side, but I absolutely love it. It might replace Dior Homme Parfum because I love it so much. Moving on to the house of Electimus London. These both are two houses from the UK. Electimus London's Octavian. Oh my god, it's an intense beefy fragrance, a major room filler, and also spicy. It's kind of like a take on Portrait of a Lady with that whole cumin thing, and I love that about this particular fragrance. It's got a bit animalic touch in there as well. There's oud, taif rose, attar of roses, saffron, and pink pepper. Really a great bad boy, kind of a rosy, oudy, spicy fragrance. Octavian from the house of Electimus London. Then moving on to the house of Marc-Antoine Barrois. This is a really intense take on B683. It's the Extrait de Parfum concentration version of that fragrance, and this is definitely a room filler. For me, this acts like a combo of B683 and also Ganymede together. I don't know why I get that, and I feel like Ganymede is already an offspring of B683, so no wonder I get that. But it's lots of oud here with saffroline, which is basically saffron, violet leaf absolute, and woods and earthiness, and a bit of muskiness in there as well. But man, it's so good, so good. I love this. I think it might actually replace Ganymede as being a favorite, because I get Ganymede from this. But either way, B683 Extrait, a great fragrance, and definitely a room filler. Moving on to the house of Amouage, it's Interlude 53. For me, this is a really intense and very luxurious take on the original Interlude Man. Very concentrated, very smoky, and also that oregano note in here is so unique. Absolutely love that oregano note. Makes for a very unique fragrance, you know, when you've got these kind of dry, smoky, amber fragrances, you've thrown in oregano to kind of give you an interesting contrast and an interesting segue into enjoying your fragrance. But a lovely fragrance. There's definitely oud and smoke in here as well, but in the end it's a very resinous amber. This is Interlude 53. Moving on to the house of Parfums de Marly, it's Carlisle. So Carlisle is a warm, spicy, woody fragrance with their patchouli. There's definitely lots of patchouli here. There's tonka beans, vanilla, and some other notes to create for this very wonderful, intense, woody, slightly fruity fragrance. And for me, I get cinnamoniness in there as well, a little baked goods like quality, but also I feel like this Carlisle is taking two Marly fragrances, Herod and Leighton, to combine something like that. That's what I get with this, but very intense, long lasting, and definitely a room filler. Carlisle is the 10th fragrance I'm talking about today. Alright, so the next 10, as I said, are the most intense and beefy fragrances and the biggest room fillers for me. We're going to start off with the house of Narcotica. It's Dulce Diablo. So all of these are really intense, and be careful not spraying these really close to you, because it could take over and, you know, go inside your mouth and things like that. Especially this one here, I've experienced that. As the first time I sprayed it, I was like, oh my god, that went in my mouth. But it's an intense fragrance. It's a gourmand. It's boozy, woody, intense, and fruity. There's cognac here, cacao, so it has a chocolatey touch with sandalwood, dried apricots, fresh apricots, vanilla, and really delicious, rummy kind of booziness as well. Really intense, long-lasting Dulce Diablo. Definitely a room filler for sure. Moving on to the house of Nichane, and I'm doing a layering duo for Nichane. I always do these this particular layering duo because I feel like it's a really, really heavenly combination. Hachivat with 100 Silent Ways together creates for a nuclear fragrance. Hachivat for me is already pretty nuclear on its own, but when you combine it with 100 Silent Ways, it becomes really something totally different. Hachivat has notes of pineapple, oak moss, grapefruit, woodsy notes, and patchouli. And then we've got with 100 Silent Ways, vanilla, gardenia, sandalwood, peach, and jasmine. It's basically a match made in heaven, like the male and the female together coming together to create this really, really beefy baby. Really intense fragrance combo. So it's Hachivat with 100 Silent Ways. Definitely a room filler. Moving on to the house of Mancera, it's red tobacco, this one right here. Really intense, really overwhelming, probably one of the most intense fragrances from Mancera. It's tobacco, it's intense with vanillic touches and some fruitiness and spices. So there's definitely a bit of a holiday-ish vibe in here because there's cinnamon, but there's oud here, patchouli, saffron, and incense. Really, really intoxicating, a big room filler. This is red tobacco, really, really potent stuff from the house of Mancera. Moving on to the house of Amouroud, it's sunset oud. This one right here. This house makes beast mode fragrances for sure. Really, really long lasting and intense, especially their ouds. Although I feel like the white collection, which are more kind of supposedly softer fragrances, are really, really overwhelming and intense as well. But Sunset Oud is a leathery oud fragrance, and it has ambery touches and resinous touches, and of course woods and aromatics with some tobacco. So check that out. Very, very long lasting Sunset Oud from the house of Amouroud. Up next, going to the house of Tiziana Terenzi. It's Hail Bop, this one right here. So this to me kind of takes like the characteristic of Le Lion from the house of Chanel, and even though that's a pretty intense fragrance, here we have a nuclear version of it, and definitely a big room filler. If you like that fragrance, definitely check this one out. I don't think they're identical, but it's kind of in that same ballpark. Lots of amber here, lots of labdanum. There's a bit of leathery touches. There's lots of aromatics and spices, some vanillic touches as well, and it creates for a very, very nuclear amber fragrance. It's super delicious, by the way, and if you love amber, you gotta try Hail Bop, especially if you're also a fan of Le Lion. But moving on, going to the house of Unique Luxury, it's Crush on Me for a very interesting patchouli caramel combo. The patchouli in here is kind of on the green side. It's not necessarily chocolate cakey, and when you throw in the caramel, it becomes sticky, gooey, intense, and sweet. So a contrast of the two makes for a very unique fragrance. In addition to the patchouli and caramel, you've got ginger, lime, and amber. Once again, it's an ambery fragrance, and those are the ones that really, really last a long time. They're the thick, beefy kind of fragrances that will fill a room. So Crush on Me is the 16th fragrance. And then I always have to feature this particular fragrance from the house of Maison Francis Kurkdjian. It's Baccarat Rouge 540 in the Extrait de Parfum concentration. This is definitely a room filler and also lingers on. Those are the kind of fragrances you want. Fragrances that last a long time, lingers forever, and leaves a massive trail, amazing trail, sexy trail. People chase you down when you wear this stuff. I know it has lots of fans, and it also has a lot of haters. I don't know if you're a fan of it or a hater of it, but this stuff lasts. It's ambroxan, ambergris, floral notes, and then there's the almonds, and then the spices and ambery touches as well. So Baccarat Rouge 540 and Extrait de Parfum concentration. That stuff you can smell everywhere now. Everybody wears it. It's probably the most popular fragrance of all time currently. Moving on to the house of Maison Crivelli, it's Patchouli Magnetic. Nuclear fragrance, really, really long lasting, really, really creamy, really, really tropical creamy, kind of milky patchouli fragrance. There's definitely a little fruitiness here, but it's also lots of gardenia and frangipani. So definitely the tropical presence is here. Acts humid, but it's lots of patchouli, of course, with the vanillic touches, and there's definitely a leathery undertone. This one also garners me compliments. It's amazing. It is an acquired taste, though, I have to be honest. Definitely an acquired taste. Be warned, I really like it. I don't care for the other two fragrances in the red bottle collection. I really love the patchouli, really love it. And I like the fact that it garners me compliments. Patchouli Magnetic from the house of Maison Crivelli. Up next, going to the house of Maître Parfumé Gantier, we are talking about Ambre Mythique. I left off Ambre Perso for this video because I feel like Ambre Mythique is kind of similar to Narcotica's Dulce Diablo, not in smell, but the way it acts. It has this kind of issue, if you call it an issue, for it to kind of seep into your mouth because it's got this weird cloud when you spray it. So because of that, I find it to be a room filler, and it's a very, very intense and long-lasting fragrance. This brand has lots of ambers. This is the second or third amber from this house, and it's featuring Labdanum, Myrrh, vanilla, lavender, incense, coriander, tonka, patchouli, sandalwood, and geranium. Check it out. Really, really potent stuff. Definitely a room filler and very, very long-lasting. Ambre Mythique from the house of Maître Parfumé Gantier. And then we're going to end the list at the top of the spot. And again, it's not a ranked list. I'm just giving you options here. It's followed. You got to be careful with this stuff because once it gets on your clothes, after washings, it still stays there. I haven't experienced a fragrance like that in years. In years. They wash off right away. This stuff, I've had my pants dry cleaned multiple times. I can still smell it when I take it off the hanger. It's that potent. Room filler for sure. If you don't want the room to smell like this fragrance for days and days and days and days, do not spray it in a room. This is definitely one of the biggest room fillers ever. It's coffee, cocoa, caramel, maple syrup, vanilla, and amber. Really, really potent stuff. It's kind of like a maple syrupy kind of coffee fragrance. It smells like breakfast basically. So if you want to smell like breakfast for a long time, try Followed. This is definitely the #1 room filler. Anyway guys, those are the 20 room fillers that I wanted to highlight for you today. I might have left off some fragrances. I wanted to kind of do a little something different, but here we have some 20 awesome fragrances. If you like your fragrances beefy, intense, long lasting, and definitely that fill the room up with its scent, definitely check these fragrances out. If you have recommendations for other fragrances that are room fillers, please do let me know. Put a comment down below so I can find out what it is and I can check it out. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video, please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. And then finally, as a bonus option, we've got DS & Durga's Leatherized. So Leatherized is a primer, but you can definitely wear it on its own because it is so overwhelming and definitely fills a room up and doesn't, you know, go away for quite a long time. Even though it's a primer, it's meant to be, you know, added to other fragrances to enhance them. So it's an enhancer, primer, and to make the, you know, the smell different. You can wear it on its own as a very unique leather fragrance. It smells really authentic for me. It's really, really an acquired taste too. It's very smoky. There's definitely ambery touches, but they call it butterscotch leather, cistus, cubeb, pale orris, cypriol, saffron, vegan castoreum, myrrh, and cade oil. So if you like the idea of a real leather, you can wear it on its own and use it as a primer or an enhancer of other fragrances, not only from the house of DS & Durga. Definitely check this one out. And again, this one also fills a room up. This one disappears faster than the Followed, but definitely it has a issue with lingering on forever and staying in a room for a long time. So this is Leatherized from the house of DS & Durga, and that is the bonus option for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.